What does a submissive woman do for her man?
Everything.
What does that mean?
You know, like packing his bag, unpacking his bag, just making sure all the things that he wants. And like, I pretty much read his mind. So it's like, if I know you and I study you, like I know how you are in the morning, I know how you are about midday, I know when you're in this mood, what you need. Like before you can ever ask me for something, I'm already on it. I mean, he's spoiled. And you know, when I talk to my girlfriends about it, they're always like, oh, how you guys doing? And I'm just like, girl, he's rotten. I'm like, he's spoiled rotten. Like, he's rotten. But I love that. Like, I want him to be that. I think my biggest flex is how I treat my man. And I've been known to love people back to health. And sometimes it's very draining, but my love is my superpower. And I used to hate that about myself. But now it's like, I'm just embracing it. Like, that's who I am. Like, if I love you, I can heal you.
It's your joy.
It is my joy. You know, I love to see him eating the meal that I cooked. I love seeing him sleep easy. Every night, like clockwork, I scratch this man's back to sleep. And I know when he's asleep because I can tell when his breathing changes. And some people might think that's psychotic, but that's like, I just know that's when I'm like, oh, I can stop now. But I find joy in being your rest, you know? So know what that means. And that works for us because he wants what I have to offer.
This conversation was really, really dope to me and much needed. I know you guys have seen a lot about masculine, feminine, red pill, submissiveness. All these conversations have been coming up on a regular basis. And this clip right here is from a really dope podcast. And this is just a portion of the podcast. I did have the opportunity to watch the full podcast, so I'm going to go over my thoughts with you guys today. The first thing that I want to talk about is the rundown as to what submission is. And I feel like it does get misconstrued, especially after listening to this clip. There are going to be a lot of women that are highly triggered from the response. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are countless women coming down on her because of how she explained submission. So I want to go over a couple of things just so you guys really have an understanding. The first thing is being submissive is more a state of mind and a state of being, not specific gestures. So even though she's saying pack his bag, unpack his bag, that can be classified as submission, but it's all relative to who you are submitting to. There are plenty of men that are fully capable of packing their own bags, yet perceive themselves to have a submissive wife. Submission, in my opinion, is a state of mind and a state of being, which is non-confrontational, someone who's always looking for the optimistic or the positive perspective, someone that's always looking to uplift and administer love and care when they're able to perceive an opportunity to do so. That does not mean that they're unable to stick up for themselves, they're unable to set boundaries, and they're unable to speak their mind. But typically that is the perception of submission. So a lot of women tend to view it as a slave state, if you will. Now, the reason why women think it is such a slave state is it's completely captured in this podcast, unfortunately not in this clip, but later on in the discussion. There was a portion where the interviewer was asking, what do you get in return? And the response was confusion, almost deer in the headlights, which speaks to me and says that unfortunately she has mastered perhaps the art of submission, or how she would convey her art of submission, but has not yet mastered how to get reciprocity, how to make sure her cup is being refilled to continue that same energy, which in my opinion is greatly needed, and a key piece or a key reason why a lot of women are shunning and downright even saying they will never submit is because of their fear of lack of reciprocity. And that is a key component when it comes to women and submission. In my opinion, this is heavily connected to the rate of divorces that we see every day. Right now, it's depicted around 80% of women are the ones filing for divorce. And could this be the source of that? Being as though that a lot of women, as well as a lot of men, are going into relationships with the perception that the woman should be submissive and not require anything in return for her efforts. So I feel like a situation like that or a circumstance like that would run the woman down and create a situation to where she's consistently available for output but is not receiving very much input to, in a sense, refresh herself and rejuvenate herself, which is the responsibility of her counterpart. Unfortunately, we're not seeing that depicted in this post. Instead, what we're seeing is a woman communicating how much she loves to be submissive. But then when the interviewer decides to let her know how her dynamic works with her partner and how they communicate needs equally and meet each other halfway, even though the conversation may not start as an easy one, they tend to produce a reason to adjust on the other side of the conversation. The interviewee is in shock. Did you really present that to him? What did he say? How did he feel? She is coming from a place of not even understanding the idea of communicating your wants and needs to your partner. To me, that does not look like submission. It looks like codependency. It looks like a system that she has set up in her own mind. It is okay to provide everything and be everything and do everything, but not have expectations to receive everything and see him be everything for her in return. Now, I can hear the men as well saying, well, he is the provider. He pays all the bills and he does this and he does that. And that's very true. And there should be something he should receive for the benefits of having access to him in that fashion. But understand, there is much more that exists in a relationship than just packing bags. There are a lot of angles that a woman would like to receive appreciation for, and it doesn't have to be anything grandiose. It just has to be some form of acknowledgement. But this woman here doesn't seem to be a person who has experience with receiving such appreciation from her counterpart. Now, don't get me wrong, everything that she said was not incorrect. There are pieces of this depiction of submission that a lot of women do not have a grasp on. When she was talking about reading his mind and studying her husband, I definitely agree that is a tactic that a woman should use when she is channeling her submission and trying to get tapped in with her husband or her male counterpart. Studying him and understanding his mannerisms and why he does the things that he does, what his body language signifies, and so on and so forth is a key component of being submissive. But it's not just a trait that's attributed to women. Men are able to be just as observant and respond accordingly as well. So it's a beautiful thing to have present on both sides, in fact. In addition, there was a portion where she was saying that this is my joy and my biggest flex is taking care of my man. There is nothing wrong with that at all. I would even say that to some extent I share her sentiments as far as that being her biggest flex. You should take pride in how you take care of your man. You should be happy to cook his meals. You should be able to do these things for him with joy and happiness and completely allow the willingness to do overflow in front of him so he knows his requests, his needs, so on and so forth is not a burden to you at all, but something that you take pride in contributing to his life. And she is right. You can heal with this. You can motivate with this. This is magic at your fingertips. Submission is an art form. It is also the nature of the woman. But that does not mean that men do not also have the ability to nurture. We have to get away from that perception, because it suggests that when it comes to love and care, a woman is the only individual who is able to provide it and understand it to make other people feel comfortable around her. In reality, men are just as capable. Unfortunately, they haven't been taught to hone those skills. More than likely, he will not get proficient at it until he has children, or he trusts the woman in his life enough to allow her to embrace him to get more comfortable with practicing those same abilities. But it's something that is very necessary, and the woman should be very proficient at it and not be afraid to use that when loving on her person. To the women that view this woman as a problem or someone that's going to start a trend that's going to ultimately fall on women in a negative way, I have to ask that you go and find a mirror and really look at yourself. What she is saying as far as being submissive and being joyful about catering to her man is 100% part of the job as it relates to channeling your femininity and your ability to submit. However, the portion where she hasn't even come into realization that it is okay to have her needs get met in return is where we're lacking. So there's nothing wrong with that level of submission, that level of connection, that level of love. But I also want to let you know that that's not something you should give to anyone. You have to find this part of yourself, develop this part of yourself when you find someone who is worthy of your submission. And when I say worthy of, I mean they're just not a person taking everything you have to give and not producing anything for you. Because we have to get replenished and we have to get our cups refilled. So if she's looking out for you and you're looking out for you, who is looking out for her? Relationships are about balance. So if she pours everything into you and your happiness and your wants and needs, if you're able to do the same in return for her, both parties get their needs met. And that's what women ultimately want to achieve in their relationships, but we are failing miserably, perhaps due to choosing the wrong candidate. You can still be feminine and have boundaries. You can still be submissive and still require things or ask for things. And men, I would like to ask that you not get your feathers ruffled by reciprocity. I get it. You may be financially taking care of the situation, and that is appreciated. But when you expect a nurturer to pour nurture, understand that nurturing ability, that source, a well of energy, has to come from somewhere. And she pulls it from her experiences, from her interactions, whether they're positive or negative. So you being a positive source for her can essentially replenish her cup and enable her to be able to get up and do it again. And get up and do it again and be consistent because she's being replenished. I think it's a misunderstanding when it comes to relationships that sometimes, even from the perspective of women, we make it seem like we're just this endless flow of energy that never runs out. But that's unrealistic. Even when you're dealing with being feminine and being submissive, eventually your energy depletes. So there's something that has to occur from your environment to help you replenish, whether it be within your own self, getting meditation. But of course, if you're pouring into another actual being, it would be nice if some of that good energy came from them. There's nothing wrong with being submissive. It's actually your superpower. If you can learn to tap into that part of yourself, you can do great things in this life. I'm going to close out on this. There was a portion of the video where she was saying, even with all of this, submission being her joy, it can get draining sometimes. And women, I know you know the feeling of when it gets draining. Could you imagine being in that state of feeling drained and not being able to understand that it is okay to request reciprocity from your person, to even expect them to see you're depleted, see your breath is off, see your mannerisms are off, and rise to the occasion to replenish you? Yes, it would be beneficial. But this woman here is saying that she, more often than not, can help regulate herself and do those things herself, which means her emotional state is not being met by the person that she's pouring all her attention and submissiveness into. Now, that doesn't have to be a bad thing. Don't get me wrong. There are relationships that follow that dynamic, and she understands her role and so does he, and it works. But when you watch her closely as she's discussing with the interviewer how her relationship goes and how they're able to talk to each other and have this opening of a well of information that they provide to each other, the interviewee seems genuinely curious and shocked that that even is something that can take place. So it's not necessarily about submission. Submission is not the problem. That is who we are as women, and we should feel comfortable to stretch our hands out and be proud of it and hold our head up high in that place. Where we fall short is not understanding that it's okay for us to express our wants and needs, intertwined with being submissive and feminine. It is okay to have an approach. The idea of submission is not around giving him every single thing that he is looking for with no requirements for yourself. That is not the definition of submission. Submission and femininity can be a beautiful thing. You can definitely heal and change the lives of everyone around you if you can tap in and master that part of yourself. But if you are going to use it as an rationalization to cater to a man and ignore your own needs, ignore your wants, ignore your dreams, you may actually be using submission as a means of neglecting yourself. And that's not where we want to be. We want to be in a place where everyone walks away fulfilled, emotionally, mentally, physically, where we're confident and we can heal from our insecurities and we can uplift each other and support each other. That is the source of femininity and submission. And we should be proud of that component, that we're able to contribute to the lives of the people around us. It truly is a superpower. But understand that who you choose to show that beautiful and miraculous life with is a very important choice, because oftentimes you will end up dealing with a person who doesn't appreciate genuinely what it means to tap into your submissive and feminine self, and they will not reciprocate what you're trying to offer. One of the last pieces of this podcast was when she said, "He wants what I have to offer." And to me, that is one of the most important parts of this whole discussion. It really doesn't matter if you're submissive or if you're feminine. It's about choosing a partner that is also choosing you. And they have to understand what you contribute, know what you bring to the table, appreciate and love all of your scars and your perspectives, and be willing to grow with you and live in that. You can give femininity and submissiveness to anybody, and a person that doesn't want it will lack the appreciation of it, and they won't be able to understand it well enough to even reciprocate. We have to choose our partners better. Queens, it truly starts with us. Peace.